made with respect to responsible and sustainable growth, and certainly this is one of them. The Bay Beach development is one of them, and I can unequivocally say that it is
not interested in the north side. I wish they were, because we could have looked at that type of a scenario. I met with a group that said maybe we can find a developer that will do something else. Well, unfortunately, they had an opportunity. They couldn't come up with that. I had a phone call this weekend to say, reconsider. And I said, okay, you find me a lawyer that's going to work pro bono, that has the credibility in somebody to be an authority, and you show me documentation authority that these people are very, very competent and have argued cases of law to win. And that if they lose, that they pick up the tab and that there's no burden to the town of Fort Erie. So you can be assured, as God made little green apples, that anything done this evening,
all
contrary
speculative,
to what was decided Wednesday night, will be cases of litigation, and the Molineros will thank us for our consideration, and they'll see us in court. Now, whether the delegation here this evening is smarter than myself or our solicitor in regards to the fact that he's analyzed the contract and the liability is slight and that it's not going to cost us that much money, if you wish to, I'm not rolling the dice in that regard, not to my constituents. But believe me, I have gone down this path to move this development, and that's not happening. So I will always say is, as the lawyer says, govern yourself accordingly.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of points. First off, we have before us right now a reconsideration, and that's what's on the table. So I would think that in terms of process, that we would want to go forward with that reconsideration. Then, as we've heard, there is another motion that Councillor Collard was wanting to bring forward, and I think he mentioned something about the bylaw. And I don't want to put words in his mouth in terms of what I think he was doing or whatever the case may be, because I'm not familiar with it, but has something to do with the bylaw. Now, having said that, and looking at the purchase and sale agreement, it is a contingent agreement, I believe, and maybe our legal counsel can comment on that as to whether or not it's a contingent agreement. I look at it as a contingent agreement because there are, in fact, contingents that need to be met. There's a orderly flow of items and conditions that need to be met, of which one of those items, in an orderly manner, is how we, as a newly elected council, deal with bylaw number 2610. If we choose to amend, if we choose to repeal that bylaw, then quite obviously one of those conditions under the contingency agreement is not met. Therefore, I would think that we are not potentially exposed because we have not met one of those conditions. And that's clearly stated in the purchase and sale agreement, in that we have that option to do that. And I would think that the Molineros know that going in that they know quite clearly that there is a potential exposure at some point to them if this council does in fact want to change one of the contingencies within that agreement. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't profess to be a lawyer. I heard the term contingency. It resonated well with me because if I look at the purchase and sale agreement, there are items there that are conditions that need to be fulfilled. So I guess I do look to our town solicitor to see whether or not this is in fact a contingent agreement in the true sense of the term, and go forward from there.
So, do you want to make any comments here, or did you have anything to say in the closed session?
Through your worship, I've already provided this advice in the closed session, but certainly that description does not reflect my advice. I would not agree with the statement of Councillor Hill. It's not the advice that I provided council.
Councillor Hill?
So I guess through you, your worship, to the solicitor, then you are stating emphatically that this is not a contingent agreement? Is that what you're stating?
Through your worship, yes.
Anything further?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm glad to hear that Councillor Schuler was in favor at one time of putting a development on the north side, and that gives me some encouragement. The fact that the Molineros wanted nothing to do with it doesn't preclude us from seeking another developer. That is my contention. I think we need to work with them as best we can, and hopefully we can avoid any serious litigation. I think we can, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think that Molineros aren't the only developers in the world, and I'm sure that there's somebody who would like to come along and work with the town of Fort Erie and council and put something that the residents of Crystal Beach and the town of Fort Erie can be proud of, instead of this divisive building that looks like it's what it's doing to me. So, thank you.
Anything further from anyone? Councillor Becerra for the second time.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. The Molineros are not the only developer in the world, I agree, but they are the only developer in the world that at this point in time we have a contract with for a 12-story condo at Bay Beach that is signed, sealed, and for all intents and purposes, based on the advice from our solicitor, delivered. So be forewarned, if we're going to go down this road, what the implications could be.
Further from anyone? I will certainly not be supporting any reconsideration whatsoever. The smell test to me is the smell that's going to permeate through this council chambers and through this town when we walk away from this, and the costs we will have to bear, legal responsibility we will have when this is done. I want to know that those who will be supporting this action, how they propose to pay for that. And I believe as we get into the next go around of this, I think we have to hear from the treasurer as to how do we pay for this. We have to have some source of funding in order to do it. We're just going into budget, and you know, there's millions of dollars that are excuse me, that there are the potential of millions of dollars of liability to this municipality in taking this action, and I will not give that
Keyword potential.
liability or
It's
impose
all
liability
speculative.
on any of the taxpayers of the town of Fort Erie. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried. Councilor Collard, do you have another bylaw? Another recommendation? Sorry. Yeah. Everyone who voted, just before I go back, I think there's some confusion that we were voting to reconsider the motion that we presented Wednesday night, and it was passed again. So therefore, I'm not sure if everyone understood what they were doing. Should have been the opposite way. You should have opposed this if you want to go for. Well, I could say no, but we won't. That wasn't your intent. Madam Treasurer, you want to say something first?
Through you, Your Worship, as the CAO pointed out, that this course of action will undoubtedly lead to some litigation on the part of the Molineros, and with any action, whether initiated by council or initiated by an external party, we have to manage the financial exposure that we're subjecting ourselves to. Therefore, we have to consider the possible damages that might result and that we might be subject to, including the cost of the legal action, as well as any costs incurred by the Molinero, opportunity costs, lost profits, which they've identified to be in the to the tune of millions of dollars. Therefore, I don't see how we can go down this course of action without proactively addressing a financial or funding source, which we currently do not have. Therefore, it would require some form of funding set aside in the budget over the course of a number of years, as the solicitor pointed out, would be required to see this action through. So I don't see how we can proceed on this course of action without identifying a funding source.
So if we're going to do this, then if we defeat this evening and have a new motion come on, the new motion must include a source of funding. I was going to get that would have been the next motion. That in order to do this, there's going to have to be a source of funding. Do you want that on this motion?
Through your worship, we would have to establish that the source of funding we're looking for is the potential high-end, the potential exposure that we're entering into, which could be to the tune of $3.3 million.
So my concern is that, do you want this before this motion is on or at the next motion? So if this motion is defeated, then council has taken that action. If there's a subsequent motion to come on the floor.
I think it should be part of the
This motion.
Because
Okay,
it's in tandem.
Since we're reconsidering this motion, or the vote, because obviously there was some confusion, Councillor Collard, you'll have to come up then with a source of funding for the potential liabilities. Has been basically identified in the report that we received on Wednesday night. How is that to be funded? Have a source of funding. That was. No, I'm just. This was what was brought up on Wednesday, that if we were to go down the path of not doing this, there has to be a source of funding identified within the budget to offset any potential litigation pursuant to the PSAB regulations, I would assume it is, or what are general accounting principles, that you just can't do this without identifying the potential source of, potential costs of litigation and the source of funding where that'll be coming from. Madam Treasurer, what would you recommend? Give Councilor Collard a hand here and see if you can help him out, because obviously
Your worship, basically,
not what he intended,
the town doesn't have any source of funding set aside for litigation, similar to as we proceeded down the path to undertake the litigation with respect to the OMB hearing. We had to set aside and establish a source of funding at that time when the decision was made to undertake, to proceed to OMB hearing. So it's in a similar fashion, we have to address the fact that there are going to be legal costs associated with this. In the absence of having any source of funding, it would have to come with an allocation through the operating budget that we're considering for 2011.
So your recommendation would be then that you would then, if this is defeated this evening, and that a source of funding be considered in the 2011 budget as a line item?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Well, that Councilor Collard, that's what, just to let you know, that would be the recommendation that would have to come forward, because we have to do, yeah. As you're saying, we have to have a source of funding. Councilor Luberts.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Through you to Ms. Chamberlain. On Wednesday night, when the resolution was brought forward, it was read in these council chambers, and there was nothing that said all in favor and all against. If you go against this, we have to have a source of funding. It was never mentioned that we had to have a source of funding when we were voting. If it was defeated on Wednesday night, it would have just been defeated.
I think we're going to have to go back into closed session. This was all clearly delineated in closed session, so I think we're going to have to go back into closed session. Motion to go back into closed session. Okay, we're gonna call a 5-minute recess to get clarification. Those that are, been given the advice, do not feel that they need the advice, so we will then move on instead of going into closed session.